All right, a little sip of beer. And now, let's get into the characters. The characters make the story in this game, in my opinion. Let's start with Kratos. Now, Kratos is exactly what you think he would be. He's a whole lot of what he was in the last game. He's a dad struggling to find that connection with his son, find peace with the death of his wife and his past. Just overall, just find his footing as a father. I think the story between Kratos and Atreus is quite incredible. I think it's some of the best story writing and storytelling since I've probably played The Last of Us for the first time. I mean, that dynamic between Ellie and Joel. I mean, I know Ellie is not his biological daughter, but anyone that knows the story of The Last of Us knows that she pretty much becomes his daughter. And the depths of their relationship reminds me a lot of this one. The hardened, closed backness of the beginning of the relationship, and once the characters are kind of forced out of their comfort zones and have to rely on each other, then they tend to bond and just grow stronger together as a whole and just become this dynamic duo and these group of characters that we love and idolize in a sense. And Kratos and Atreus, they're still doing their thing in this one. But Kratos, he's the man. I really like the steps he takes, just as a father, as a man. Obviously, he's been through a lot and he's seen a lot in his days. But the growth of this character, I think, is tremendous. Let's talk about the star of the show, Atreus, or aka Loki, as he is referred to in Asgard and in certain prophecies. Now, in my opinion, this game is about Atreus. He is kind of pushed to the forefront at times. You even get to play with Atreus throughout the game, which I really enjoy. I know a lot of people prefer to play as Kratos, but Atreus brings some different skills to the table and just different gameplay overall. He's a little bit faster, a little more nimble, agile. Obviously, he has the bow. Ranged combat and stuff like that is a little bit easier with Atreus, in my opinion, or taking out enemies that have bows or arrows or whatever. He goes through a lot of growth in this game and takes a lot of chances. He takes a lot of chances. He's seeking answers. He wants to know how he can stop Ragnarok. He is wondering about these prophecies that have been laid out for him. He's trying to figure out why he's called Loki. There is a lot going on with him. He is traveling to Asgard almost as a double agent, at times, trying to figure out what Odin is doing, what his next plan is, and really puts himself in some dangerous situations. And I have to applaud him in that regard. He's got some cojones. He's got some balls. He really puts himself out there at times, and he's not afraid to. And another thing I really appreciate about Atreus is his empathy and his compassion for others, which is strange because not strange that he has those attributes, but at the same time it is. I know that how he was portrayed in the Marvel movies and stuff like that doesn't exactly line up with the games, but he's always like that mischievous one in the movies and stuff like that, and he really cares for animals and other people and stuff in the game. So I don't know which one kind of leans more to the truth of Atreus, but either way, really like the character and what he brings to the table. In my opinion, the next game that comes out will be featuring him as the main act, and Kratos will be taking a back seat, in my opinion. But truly love the character development of Atreus in this game. Next, let's talk about Freya. Freya is a very interesting character to me with lots of different layers like an onion. She is a very complex character. She's battling so many different emotions with the loss of her son, and then also the loss of her son being handed to her or taken away from her from Kratos or Atreus, however you want to look at it. And obviously she has some resentment there and a bit of a grudge. She also still has those same feelings towards Odin as well too, with how he was treating Baldur and everything he did to Freya and so on. But I just think she's a badass character overall. I love her design, and she is a very proud individual, a very strong individual, and very trustworthy and loyal. She has to battle a lot in this game and really show forgiveness to Kratos. You know, obviously she was assisted by him in rescuing her brother, and that kind of changed the way she looked at him. But in the end, the conversations they were having together and the way they bonded on that journey, I think really opened her eyes about what she would really get out of it if she were to kill Kratos. Like Kratos tells her, you can do that, and I completely understand if you want to take that action, but in the end, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to bring Baldur back. It's not going to make you feel better. That emptiness is still going to be there regardless. So in the end, she chooses to forgive him, and I really appreciate that, and I really enjoy Freya as a character. Let's talk about Thor and Odin. Now, these two characters, I'm going to talk about them because they're basically attached to the hip, for right or wrong. Odin, on the one hand, is a very manipulative individual who knows how to twist his words and just the way he presents things to people in order to them to get in or buy into his narrative or aid him or assist him in some way. It's truly remarkable to watch him work, though. Take, for example, when Atreus comes to Asgard for the first time, and everyone is completely thrown off why Odin is going to allow Atreus, whose father has wreaked havoc on other people's lives that live in Asgard, being his son, Thor, and so on, into Asgard, into their home, and why he's trusting him. Odin lays out in front of him as soon as he shows up, I know he's here to trick me. I know he's here to take advantage of me and learn stuff like that. Which completely throws Atreus off, which it should. But I'm just like, wow, this dude, I don't know. It's just like, it's hard to put your finger on him. You don't really know what he's thinking or what his next move might be, per se. So it's really interesting to watch him work. He's got this really cool library. He's like always reading in and stuff like that. It's like study with all these books. He's a very interesting character to me. I really like his range as an individual, because one minute you kind of like hate him, and then on the other end you're like interested to know more about him and like intrigued by him in a weird way. Yeah. Yeah. Odin, though, cool character. Thor, on the other hand, I think is a very interesting character too. I've always thought of Thor as a very interesting character, and his family and his lore. He is portrayed in this game completely different than I've seen him like in the Marvel movies and stuff like that. In the Marvel movies, he's very clean cut, you know, just big, handsome, strong guy, and can do it all and this and that. And don't get me wrong, they, I guess, show his struggles a little bit in those movies, but not like in this game. Like him struggling with his family, his relationship with his father, him and his the loss of his sons, and then him arguing with his wife about, you know, what to do, and then why is Atreus here, and why is he trying to help us out and stuff like that. And not trusting him, and then they're kind of forced to like work together, which is interesting chapters of the game too, when Atreus and Thor have to work together. Because he kind of bullies him around, then he kind of grows to like him, and yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic because two completely opposite people. But when you put them next to each other, they're quite comical. I really enjoyed the story arc of Thor and this take on Thor overall. Okay, so let's talk about Mimir for a second. He is still kind of wearing those same feathers in his cap as the last game. He is still the smartest man in the world, considered by many. And also, I consider him to be kind of a father figure for Atreus, in a sense, too. He really balances out Atreus, Kratos' relationship when there's tension between the two, or when one or the other don't have the answers or know what to say to the other one. Mimir is kind of that one that steps in with that wealth of knowledge, that understanding, and he's able to look at things through a different lens. And also, collectively, as a group, he is kind of the leader in a sense of strategy and, I don't know, kind of organizing a plan, thoughts, and opinions about the next action that should take place. When they're sitting at the round table, per se, a lot of people are listening to him and leaning on him for advice. So Mimir, he's still around doing his thing and just as important as he's always been. Okay, so let's talk about Tyr. Tyr is actually considered by the god of war in many books about these gods. And in this game, in this series, Kratos is considered the god of war, which I think is interesting. He's held captive in this game, and Atreus thinks that he is the key to leading them into battle with Ragnarok. He thinks this because of prophecies he'd seen of Tyr leading them into battle against Odin. Now, little do they know that this is also a ploy by Odin himself. I think he has planted these prophecies into place to trick Atreus, because basically they go to rescue Tyr, and he's basically a shell of himself. He is not this great warrior, this great god that they were expecting. He's imprisoned, and he's weak, and he doesn't have any confidence, and he doesn't know why they're there. And anyways, it's all very odd, and they rescue him, they get him out of there, and he's been offering advice and trying to help, but he will not engage in battle. He will not partake in helping them with war the entire time. And there's little like bits and pieces you kind of pick up on, but you would never suspect that in the end it's Odin disguising himself as Tyr to get into the household of Atreus, Kratos, Brock, Sentry, all of these guys, and basically be a double agent himself and spy on them. It's really quite remarkable. I didn't really see it coming. I felt something off with him throughout the game, but I didn't know it was Odin manipulating Atreus and Kratos, but touche. I think they played most of us like a fiddle, and it was awesome. Next, we have Angrboda. Now, at this chapter of the game, things come to a slow point, in a sense. A lot of people are going to think this section of Ironwood, where Atreus basically slips into a dream and meets Angrboda, is going to be a bit of a slog. And I think that's because at this point of the game, you reach such a climax, an intense point before this section of the game. So you're basically just wanting to get through Ironwood so you can get back to the mainline story and see what happens next. It's natural to feel this way in this section. There are some interesting things that happen, and I think Angrboda is a pretty cool character. She's basically, her role in this game is basically to show Atreus' shrine. These prophecies have been passed down to her mother, to her, to deliver to Atreus. Basically set him out on this journey to meet his fate, basically. And unfortunately for Atreus, it's not necessarily the fate or the shrine that he wanted to see. It basically showed Atreus being killed. It basically showed Kratos being killed. And Atreus is holding him in his arms. And then it shows Atreus going on to serve Odin in Asgard. And he is not too happy about this. He basically turns into a wolf and freaks out. And he's like, this cannot be true. And she's trying to calm him down and basically just explain to him that you can't really change fate. You have to let it play out as it has to be. And he struggles with this concept and this idea of what's been presented to him, and he's going to do everything in his power to not let this happen from this point on. But pretty interesting section. I think this character is pretty cool too. Atreus definitely has kind of a love interest for her, an attraction, and who knows what will happen in the future. I think she has a presence, though, that will be in other games, I feel. Next, I would like to speak on the Norns. The Norns are quite interesting to me, and I would love to do a separate video just learning more about their background in the future. But basically, it's this group of characters. They're almost like elf-like, troll-like, and it's quite a journey to get down to them. You have to basically ride this like seahorse underneath into this well, and then it opens up into this like almost like weeping willow golden tree type looking home, which is really cool. But anyways, Kratos and Freya go down there to basically get answers about Atreus and the future, and the Norns basically give them a prophecy that they definitely don't want to hear, and they're like mocking them the entire time. Even the journey to get to them, the enemies that Kratos and Freya are fighting are basically trying to manipulate them and almost shapeshift into people that they love and turn their fears and their doubts against them. And it's quite challenging at times. And then once you make it down there, they're like mocking you and making fun of you the whole time and kind of throwing these prophecies in your face, like, oh, Kratos, you're gonna die. Freya, like, you basically let your son die in vain, and all this stuff. And yeah, they really get under the skin of Kratos and Freya. But I think these characters are so interesting. I want to see them fleshed out a little bit more, maybe in the future, or I don't know. I need to play more of the game now that I've beaten the main campaign and go back and visit them again, or see if I can even do that. That'd be pretty cool. Next character we were going to discuss is Garm. Garm is a giant wolf. Pretty cool at that. Apparently Tyr captured this giant creature and tamed this beast because he was eating Midgard. Yes, you heard me correct. This giant wolf was eating Midgard. Apparently, according to Mimir, just a few seasons. That being said, Tyr actually captured the beast and locked him up and chained him down, only for later for Atreus to actually go there with Kratos. And, well, actually I take that back. Atreus was basically kind of tricked into releasing this giant hellhound when he went on a mission with, I believe, Heimdall. It just started destroying the realm, ripping into all the different realms, basically, with its giant claws and just causing chaos. And Odin wasn't too happy about this, and then Atreus returns and basically tells his father what happened. Kratos decides that they need to go capture this beast and destroy it, so they go and lock it down. They basically instill Atreus's his own dog, Spirit, into Garm to calm him down and basically tame him. and to put the realms back in order once again. Heimdall is the son of Odin and the guardian of Asgard, and just kind of a jackass in this game, at least. He's portrayed a lot differently in the Marvel movie. Shocker. He was actually one of my favorite characters in that movie. Kind of like the guardian of the gate. And, yeah, in this game, he's a different guy. As Atreus enters Asgard, he encounters Heimdall. They don't get off to the best start. He's not too fond of Atreus being in Asgard. He is very suspicious, as he should be. And you know, one of the traits of Heimdall, or one of his abilities or attributes, is his foresight. His ability to read other people is basically his greatest strength. And he's basically questioning the Allfather, Odin, of why he's allowing Atreus to come in to their home, basically, and sleep in the bed of Thor's son, who basically he helped aid in the murder of. Now, this next character I don't know too much about, but he's a fire giant, and he's also the Slayer of Asgard. I'm talking about Surtur. Now, he's a pretty cool looking character. I believe he's almost like this demon-like character that becomes a hero almost, because he actually leads the army of fire giants into Asgard, comes down with his powerful sword and basically slays it into the heart of Asgard. Atreus and Kratos seek out Surtur. At first, he has no desire to help them, and they kind of talk him into it, and he asks Kratos to stick his blades into his chest, into his heart, to become the monster they want him to become. Pretty interesting. I would like to learn more about this character personally, so maybe that's a video for the future as well. Last but not least, let's talk about Brock and Sindri. These two were always characters kind of in the main story, but they weren't huge key points of the stories at time in the last game. But Sindri, Brock, they definitely helped out Atreus and Kratos many times throughout their journey with helpful items and navigational tips and just don't do this, do that types of things. And in this game, these two characters I think are pushed to the forefront and have huge roles, very meaningful parts in this game. Let's start with Brock. We learn in this story that Brock is not whole. He is not completely himself. He actually died a ways back, a few years ago, and Sindri actually went to, it's like the Lake of Souls. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically this lake where his soul was, and put his own life at risk to save his brother, but only could find like 3/4 of his soul. So he's not whole as a person. And he never told him this. He withheld this information from him, which I think would be extremely hard to tell your brother. You know, if you rescued them and you're like, yeah, you're kind of missing a piece of yourself from the past, but you're still around. I still love him as a character. He, well, like I shouldn't. I don't know why I said it like that, but like, I love his, he's like the comedy relief in this game. When things get really tense, like he brings things to a halt, and he's actually the one that discovers that Tyr is not himself and calls him out on that shit, which I thought was awesome. It was the turning point of the game. It was the apex of the game, in my opinion, when Brock was like, no, like, I don't think you have a way into Asgard. Called him out on all this stuff, and then he basically tried to take this mask that Odin desperately desired, that Atreus took from Odin when he was helping him in Asgard, and basically this mask like reveals all these secrets of the future and stuff like that. So it was very important to Odin, and he basically tried to take it disguised as Tyr, and Brock called him out on it. And he's like, hey, that's the kid's mask. What are you doing? Why are you trying to leave with it? And then Tyr turns around and stabs Brock and kills him in front of everybody. And it was gut-wrenching. It was heartbreaking to see Brock go out. and die like that. It sucked. He was one of my favorite characters, and it was a very sad moment. But man, such an awesome character. All right, let's get into it. Last but not least, I saved this character for last because I think his part is almost the most meaningful in the game, and that is Sindri. This little elf had so much growth in this game, and also so much, personally, he didn't deserve. In the last game, this little elf was always going out of his way to help people. Always helping the little guy, the one in need. Even when things weren't being returned back his way. When there's nothing in return, he would still give it everything he got. And Sindri allowed people into his home. Atreus, Kratos, Tyr, Mimir, all these people. And he was betrayed. Odin was the one that came in to his own home disguised as an individual, Tyr, and ended up killing his brother in the end because Atreus made the decision to trust Tyr, to go get Tyr and bring them back into Brock and Sindri's home. In the end, that decision was fatal. And he lost it all. He lost it all. The guy that would give everything lost it all. In the end, he would be the one to kill Odin, which I think is very poetic justice. And I think rightfully so. And I just think you have to really appreciate the arc and the character just trajectory of Sindri and Brock and everything they mean to the God of War series. I think it'd be cool if you even did some kind of spin-offs on both of these characters and brought more light, more attention to them because they are truly that special.